Bonjour et bienvenue dans l'école de comptabilité. Répétez-vous les instructions en français? Do you prefer the instructions in English?
English, please.
Each team has 20 minutes to present the case to the judges. The time is indicated on the timer as a countdown. I will also indicate the time remaining with posters. If you do not end your presentation after 20 minutes, it will be stopped to move on to the period of questions. A period of questions of a maximum duration of 5 minutes is assigned to jury at the end of the presentation. I would like to remind each judge that it's mandatory to ask at least one question during this period. Please note that you cannot reveal the name or source of your university, as you may be disqualified. I would like to ask the public to turn off the ring of their cell phone. I will now invite the judges to introduce themselves. Je vais maintenant laisser les juges se présenter et ensuite vous pourrez débuter votre présentation.
Hi, Laurie Coulombe, CPA auditor at Dallas Équipe.
Bonjour, Julien Mauger-Dumais, CPA CMA, analyse budgétaire chez Ubisoft.
Bonjour, Carson Valère, CPA auditeur chez Deloitte.
Simon Poirier, CPA CA chez Industriel Alliance.
Camille Proucormier, CPA, Ubisoft Québec.
Hi, I'm Stéphane Chumchin. I'm a senior consultant in corporate finance at Équipe.
Hi, I'm Samuel Saint-Durand. I'm Director of Postgraduate Studies here at UQAR in accounting, and I'm also a professor in accounting here at UQAR.
When you're ready.
Cher conseil d'administration de Québec Arctique, moi je m'appelle Erin et je suis accompagné par mes collègues Peter et Wen et nous sommes ravis d'avoir l'opportunité de vous présenter notre analyse financière ainsi que de vous proposer des recommandations stratégiques pour comment votre club can enter the Quebec market. And we'll do this with a five-pronged approach by first analyzing the current state of affairs by providing you with some industry specifics and answering what's in it for you. We'll then provide you with relevant constraints from a financial standard perspective and provide you with an opportunity statement.
So next we'll be tackling some accounting issues, starting with revenue recognition, then site restoration costs and asset exchange, and finally hedging against foreign exchange risk.
Then we'll address the internal control concerns you have with your organization and how to best prevent against bad behavior as well as motivate exceptional behavior from your top management.
We are also accountants who are forward-looking. We will therefore provide you some strategic insight for what's in it for your club in the near future, notably which player to select, as well as some financial projections. And then, no project is okay if it's not feasible from three perspectives. First, from a financial, environmental, and making a local impact. So those are what we're going to be focusing on today. And let's jump in. So when looking at the industry specifics, we've tackled it from a top-down approach by analyzing the Quebec market, the hockey industry as a whole, and then we looked more in-depth into your club. From the Quebec market, you are currently operating in the private sector. Therefore, you'll be constrained to ASPE financial standards regulations. Also, we were given, and having analyzed the market, a discount rate of 5%, and the Quebec market, there's no question, it is primarily French spoken. Next, the hockey industry in Quebec is very long lasting. It's been here for over 100 years, and is undisputably the most popular sport in the province. Next, being a club in Quebec, operating in the NHL, it will be playing most of its games in the US, which provides for both opportunities and threats that we'll discuss right now. Now, what's all in it for you? So, as a strength, Quebec City shares a hockey lineage, having the Nordiques been present in the previous years. Next, you have also an experienced upper management, which you can leverage to create above-average returns in the near future as you tackle uncertainties that I'll present to you right now. Also, from an internal perspective, there's quite some challenges as we don't have sufficient and proper internal management controls that we would like to bring forth to you today, as well as it's an unproven team in the local market with uncertain performance, which is definitely something we would like to hedge against. Next, as an opportunity, you are currently faced with an opportunity to bring hockey back to Quebec City, appeal to the public, and make an impact in the community. Next, and when entering this market, it's very important to make a positive impact in all aspects of the economy and the environment. And next, as a threat, things that are outside of your control that we have, that we'd like to bring forth are foreign exchange issues, tax legislation, which we are powerful against, and ultimately the local labor shortage that we've analyzed to be present in the industry. So as consultants that are forward-looking, no strategy is good, and the key drivers are only as good as a project that is financially feasible, environmentally sustainable, creating local impact, and ultimately in compliance with proper financial standard compliance.
Now moving to our opportunity statement, we believe that we have an opportunity to make the Quebec Arctic a successful franchise both on and off the ice, and how we're going to do this is by implementing effective internal controls measures, by signing a star player, and by tying everything together into a well-rounded, standard-compliant budget. So first, Erin will start by tackling the accounting issues to set the standards, and the first one will be about revenue recognition.
So, as we discussed in a previous meeting, there is currently some ambiguity into how to treat tax issues from a financial perspective and from the tax perspective with the tax legislation. So to answer your question, you are currently operating at a year end of a June 30th year end. So all the funds of $7,110 that you've received in May for the subsequent season tickets should be recognized on a cash basis from a tax perspective and be in your tax payable. From a tax perspective, from a financial statement perspective on how to treat the tax issues, it's important to treat it on an accrual basis. Therefore, initially recognizing the $7,110 as unearned revenue and subsequently recognizing it as it's earned over the 41 games throughout the year. So currently you've included it in your revenues on the financial statements. Therefore, the first adjustment to make to be compliant with financial standards is to remove the full amount and recognize it over the course of the 41 games. This difference is creating a temporal difference based on when we recognize revenue from a cash basis and a financial statement basis. Therefore, there will be deferred tax assets created and a deferred tax benefit appearing on your financial statement right now. Other factors influencing the differences between the financial statements that you have seen and you have asked us in a previous meeting are due to temporal differences by means of CCA and various depreciation calculations which are done on the financial statements. And also, one other factor that can affect the differences in your financial statements for tax purposes and for financial reporting purposes can be due to tax rate changes that can be initiated by the tax legislation on a later date. This was not something that we've seen on your financial statements yet, but this does answer the question as to why potentially the financial statements might be different.
So next, there was an issue about the Zambonis. So what happened is that the league decided to implement standardized Zambonis for all 32 teams. And there were some problems with the oil reserve of the Zambonis. So every time the Zambonis will get off the ice, there will be some oil spillage. Now, the organization estimated the decontamination cost of the land to be around $85,000. Now, under ASPE, this amount is considered as a site restoration cost and therefore must be capitalized. Now, currently, the owners of the 32 teams of the leagues, they're planning to prepare a lawsuit against the league so that the league will reimburse this amount and compensate them for this cost. What's important to understand is that you have to capitalize this amount no matter what's the probability of winning that lawsuit. Now, according to an acquaintance of yours, which is a respected lawyer, the probability of winning the lawsuit is 90%. Now, currently, you only need to disclose that information into the notes to your financial statement. However, if eventually there is really a lawsuit and the owners do win the lawsuit, you would record the government, the league will give you back the $85,000 as compensation, and you will record this amount as other revenue. Now, what's important to notice is that since there were some questions from your controller about the difference between the taxable income and the accounting income, you have to understand that because you had to depreciate this amount, because of the CCA and the different classes, it will result in further discrepancies between the accounting income and the taxable income. Now, finally, from a sustainability perspective, we know that the Zambonis are expected to last 9 years. However, we will recommend you to put some pressure to the league so that they will be investing to develop some eco-friendly machines. And we believe that this will be a great opportunity to showcase the sustainability values of your enterprise. Now next, the next issue was an asset exchange. So what happened is that the Quebec RT decided to lend 10 months of services of a physical trainer to the New York Eagles, and in exchange they would get a pro table, for a high-value pro table from the New York Eagles. Now, this could be considered as a non-monetary exchange with commercial substance under ASPE. However, there are two particularities. The first being that based on the information that we received, the table is not going to be depreciated. The value will be maintained throughout the years. And the second one is that since the physical trainer is a person and not an asset, we can really consider it as an asset exchange. Therefore, we recommend you to capitalize the asset received, which is the pool table, at the appraised value, at its appraised value, which is 80,000. And also, of course, you will have to depreciate this amount for the pool table throughout the years.
Okay, so as you're all experienced business people, you of course understand very well the importance of hedging against risk. And as such, we'd like to highlight this issue that is very unique to your organization. As a team that competes in a North American hockey league, you'll be incurring significant revenues and expenses in US dollars. And as such, you have significant transaction exposure to changes in the Canadian-US dollar exchange rate. As such, if the Canadian dollar depreciates against the US dollar, there is the possibility of major losses being sustained, and we recommend thus to purchase derivatives such as forward contracts to protect against this risk and ensure that any unexpected massive losses are avoided. Any gains and losses on the hedging instrument, derivatives, will be placed through net income and will offset perfectly against any gains and losses on your transactions. Now, moving along with internal controls, as you've highlighted to us in our meeting, right now there is definitely a lack of internal controls throughout your organization. First and foremost, we'd like to highlight the importance of hiring an HR manager to oversee the new hires while the Tremblay family is away. Currently, Monsieur Gagnon is overseeing all this process, despite the fact that he is mostly a finance professional. And as such, we believe that hiring an HR specialist will definitely be the optimal choice as you look to grow and expand your organization. Next is the lack of safeguard controls and the fact that Monsieur Gagnon is doing most of the job unsupervised with no one to look over his work. While we are sure that he is very qualified and is a trustworthy man, any organization must have controls in place to ensure that employees cannot misbehave, even if they wanted to. As such, it is vital that we hire a director of finance to oversee the duties of Mr. Gagnon and also to enable the segregation of duties such as signing of checks and other monetary duties. Of course, we would also like to incentivize excellent performance rather than disincentivize bad behavior. And we would like to propose a new bonus for Mr. Gagnon that could be centered around achieving a budgeted net income for the organization. Because we are trying to push a multifaceted focus that is not only based on the bottom line, we would also recommend implementing a balanced scorecard that would feature other key success factors such as growth of employee skills, relations with the community, improvement of internal business processes, and improving the overall brand image of the club.
Now, any new franchise entering the league through an expansion will need a star player, and we believe that Sean Green should not only be the player that you will sign, but he will also be your first captain. So let's see what he will bring to the Quebec Arctic. First, in terms of skills, we know that he's a terrific playmaker, averaging 1 point per game, and any player according these kind of stats should be considered as a star player. Next, in terms of experience, he's currently 30 years old, which is like the perfect age for being the captain of a new franchise, since he's not a rookie without experience, but at the same time, he'll be able to give to your teams around 5 to 6 years of good hockey. Now, in terms of leadership, Sean Green is a born leader. He currently has his own foundation to help people with disabilities, meaning that he will make a great community ambassador for the Arctic. In terms of personality, he will be able to bring passion, leadership, and we're certain that he will make every single fan of yours very proud of their team, which is exactly what is expected by the ownership, Mr. Tremblay. And finally, in terms of ticket sales, based on our estimates, he will be able to increase the average ticket price by 15%. And as a bonus, I would have to consider the fact that Sean Green's father was a former Quebec team legend, and therefore is idolized by the city, and the Quebec fans will gladly welcome their son as their new captain.
Now let's dive a bit more in depth into the finances. You provided us with a large amount of information regarding financials that are contingent on several variables, and we've done our best to model your projected gross revenues for the next 5 years of your hockey club. First of all, revenues from hockey operations will see a slight decline in years 3 and 4 as your club goes through a projected series of bottom 10 finishes in the league. However, by year 5, as young prospects start to come good and the club starts performing better, the club will be able to charge a premium for ticket prices, and these gross revenues should recover very quickly afterwards. There are a couple of assumptions and threats in this model, however, most notably the labor shortage in the Quebec region. As you've noted, it may be difficult to hire a full cast of 150 employees, meaning that some seats may be closed and at worst case, some games may be canceled. However, to eliminate this threat, we propose hiring and searching for employees from surrounding neighborhoods around Quebec and perhaps providing subsidies for their transportation to work to not only benefit the local community, but also ensure that the full capacity of the arena can be used and the best financial results achieved. Next is the issue of the food concessions at the new stadium, and you proposed 2 main options, either full management or subcontracting, and we have elected that food choice of full management would be the optimal decision. As you may recall, this option entails more classic foods such as fast food and beers to be served at the arena, and we believe this is a best fit since these foods are traditionally always associated with hockey night regardless of generations. Even as millennials, when we go to hockey games, we'll take hot dogs and beers over sashimis and wine any day. So even though there is a move towards trendy foods, this trend is something that has been consistent in Quebec culture and should continue this way as well. Going on with a quantitative analysis, given the predicted cash flows and sales of the food and the initial investment in the equipment of $625,000, there is also a very positive NPV with this project, and as such is overall the best choice. However, we do recognize that there is a moving trend towards more local and trendy food, and we thus suggest an additional recommendation to go along with this to partner with local breweries and perhaps get some craft beers sponsored in the stadium and appeal to the new millennial trend.
So once again, no recommendation should ever be set forward if there's no feasibility from various factors that we'd like to have as key drivers. So we've seen that our recommendation will provide local impact, as we'll be able to not only ensure financial stability for the revenues gained from the games, by ensuring that all employees and all our entire employee capacity is at max capacity, by subsidizing the levy transportation of the employees. We'll also, through the petition that Wen has brought forward to you, by drafting this petition to the other teams, with the other teams to the remaining to the league, we'll be able to ensure that the Zambonis do not create damages as they've done in the previous time, and provide for environmental sustainable approach. And ultimately, as Peter has shown, by choosing those 2 projects in terms of food and modeling the budget net income for the next 5 years, it is showing positive NPVs while taking into account the tax shield and while taking into account the budgeted values that you gave us. And as such, nous vous remercions pour votre écoute et nous serons ravis de répondre à toute question concernant l'analyse financière ainsi que nos recommandations. Merci beaucoup.
I'd like to start with a question regarding the food choice. Can you just go back to the slide? So from my understanding, concessions are better fit for sports atmosphere, so that's your decision, right?
Yes, exactly.
But just up above that, at the same time, you're associating the cultural icon with beer and fast food, which is a little bit in contradiction with your choice, isn't it?
Actually, I guess this maybe was not so clear, so I'll just try to fix that. So what I mean by that is hockey night is always associated with kind of junky food, with beers, and concessions are typically, that type of food. So we're trying to say that with concession stands, with fast food, that would be a better fit rather than a sit-down restaurant table service.
All right, I see. And so with that choice with the concessions, do you then see any risk associated with that choice? in terms of operational?
Well, in terms of operational, well, of course there is a risk that perhaps there is a movement towards more health-conscious options amongst particularly millennials, but this is something that could be phased in over time rather than going full-on for a restaurant-type service and then not being able to go back to this, which seems to have been a timeless classic.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. You talked about the Nordiques, and this was the last hockey experience in the Quebec City. I'd like to know how you manage to be sure that the Quebec City doesn't make any mistake like the city has done with the Nordiques. How can we manage not to do those mistakes?
Well, I think, of course, with any sports franchise, we need excellent management both on the business front and also in terms of hockey operations. I think to avoid the risks of boycotts and the fans cheering against the team, we need to be excellent in both regards. So really, what we've laid down here is a good foundation to build a winning championship team, but what we need is to ensure that personnel at all levels are always committed to the goal, and that through this we should be able to sustain long-term success, both on the business front and the hockey front.
You've talked about the labor shortage. The labor shortage is not only in Quebec City, but also in the surrounding cities. Your suggestion was very good, but what can we do if there is no other people that can actually work in the arena, in the other city, in the city surrounding Quebec City?
So yes, that could be a problem indeed. In a situation like that, perhaps we could look even further to perhaps sponsoring training programs or re-education for these people, so they'd be in a role to contribute to our arena. And I think by doing this, this will also be a great way to give back to the local community, which was in line with our values and should be a great solution all around.
But would you guys recommend that we hire the salary from $70 per hour to $24, or we just go somewhere else finding people work for us, or?
Well, with the salary issue, it was if we can't hire a full 150, we have to bump the salaries, correct? So we're saying that we should instead try to fill up the full 150. That way we could have the maximum capacity in our stadium and also keep the salaries to a reasonable level without having to go up to $24.
But if we don't have that much people that can work at the arena, we don't buy as much tickets as we want, so we lose a lot of money. And do you guys calculate something about this loss of money?
So are you referring to the ticket sales with?
No, but if we can't have the employees to work at the arena during a game night,
yes,
maybe we lose some buying tickets because the employees can't work at the place.
That is true. We would actually have to close many seats, and it's projected that some games would have to be canceled, meaning projections would be significantly lower. We don't have the precise figures on those estimates, unfortunately, but as we said, we have confidence in our strategy, and we think that this is the best way forward for the community and for the club.
Talking about figures, do we have an appendix or anything, or a more detailed calculation behind the gross revenue from hockey operations? Do you have any?
Yes, so I could go over some more details with this. The growth rates were provided by your board. It was 3.33% for many of the expenses, as well as ticket prices that went up or down by 5 or 15% depending on placement. And those were all factored into the model. We don't have any specific appendix in that regard, but this was all information that was provided, and we have been sure to consider all of that into this model.
Okay.
Merci, c'est ce qui m'était à la
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.